Okay, so the new drawing we're going to create is on page 81. So in your hardback book, hardback mechanical drawing book, a page you should know well. We've used this page a lot, but I like it. It has a lot of simple things on it that are pretty easy for you as here when you're starting out. And with this being kind of day 2 or day 3 of Inventor, that's kind of nice starting out with some easy stuff. So we're going to start there on page 81. We're going to do block A at the top of page 81. This will be a part file, so we're going to click on part. And we're here on the screen ready to start. Again, remember, you're going to start up here in the top left corner of Start 2D Sketch. And the first thing you have to do with Inventor, like AutoCAD or anything else, you have to decide where you're going to draw this from. So when you look here at this block, letter A, top of page 81. When you look at it, if you look at the front view of block A, and you ignore that little part that is extended there on the front, a little bit extra there on the front side, if you ignore that part, it's just a little L-shaped block drawn there in the front view. That's really a pretty simple way of creating this. We can create this block with 2 sketches this way and really create a pretty simple block. So that's where we're going to start, is drawing this from the front plane. So with that being said, we're going to click here on the front plane and get started. To get started, I'm going to draw a line. And again, I'm just going to draw that L shape that I see there on that front plane. So I'm going to start across on the bottom here, making sure that this line is parallel to the origin, which I see that constraint there. I'm going to go straight up, straight over, back up, back over, making sure my parallel and perpendiculars are showing up there all the way through. Make that the same length there. And back down to my origin, making sure I end on that green dot. So there's my shape. Again, on Inventor, as I've told you before, you just go with a shape. So that's kind of the L-shaped part there. Now, I'm going to hit Escape, so I have nothing selected. And I'm going to start up here with my constraints. First, I'm going to constrain it to my origin, which to do that, I'm going to use this horizontal constraint to start with. Now, typically, I go on the top line and the right line to constrain it horizontally. On this block, however, the top line doesn't go all the way through. So I'm just going to switch down to my bottom line. Oh, now notice, I picked my horizontal constraint, and since I'm on the different plane, it gives me that parallel dotted line there. That's great. All that means is I have to do one of my side lines first. So again, I usually do the right, but since there's no full line over here on the right, I'm going to go here to the left. Notice when I hover over it, that perpendicular line appears. That's what I'm looking for. I go down to the midpoint where my green dot appears. I'm going to click, and then I'm going to click on my origin. That centers it up nicely up and down. Once again, I'm going to go up here and pick on my vertical constraint now. Instead of doing the top line, I'm going to drop down here to the bottom and find the midpoint of it and click on my origin there. Now, it did really kind of make this block kind of a weird shape there. I'm going to hit my Escape key. And I'm going to drag this block to a little bit more of appropriate size and shape. You know, something like that, something like that. That looks more like what it does there in the book. Okay, now you've got to estimate what size to make all this. I give you the estimates here on this first one at least. Some of the other ones you're going to do on your own. You'll create your own estimates. I'm going to say that little notch going in there, the small little block on the front, I'm going to say that's 1/4 of an inch. We do try to do 1/4 inch increments here, as you remember from the past. So if that's 1/4 of an inch, the height there, I'm going to say on the top part is 1/2 of an inch. There's 3/4. I'm going to say that the bottom is 3/4. I'm going to say the overall height of the entire block is 1.5. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to dimension from the top of it to the bottom of it. I'm going to pull it over here on the right, and I'm going to say that's 1.5 inches. All right, that looks pretty good. As far as this whole block goes here, let me see. I'm going to dimension from this line over on this side to this parallel line over here. Pull it up and above. Right now I'm at 2.486. I think 2.5 might look appropriate. I'm going to type in 2.5. So that looks pretty good there. So now, my top and bottom line, my left and right line is all black. But I do have these lines here. I'm going to hit Escape so I can select them and kind of show you. This line still will move up and down, and this line will still move side to side. For this line, for the height of it, again, I made this part 1.5. I think this is a little bit over. I think this is probably going to be about 1 inch. So I'm going to go from the bottom line here, or sorry, not the bottom line, that top line there to the bottom, pull this dimension out here right underneath of this larger dimension. I'm going to make it 1. Okay. Always when you're putting these dimensions in, you want to try to stack your dimensions in there so they look nice and neat. And I'll show you a little bit more on that here in just a second. Okay. So now with this on the top, it looks like to me that this side of it's a little bit longer than this side. So I'm going to see what it looks like. I'm going to make this 1.5 and see what that looks like. Okay. So now notice where I put this dimension here. Again, it's all black now. It's fully constrained. But notice where I put this dimension here. I'm going to hit escape so I can select it and kind of move it around. I put it underneath of this overall large 2.5 inch dimension. These, look how they're nicely stacked in there. It's really easy to see my dimensions and see what they're dimensioning. If your dimensions were placed like this, tell me how easy it is to tell what your dimensions are and to see your dimensions as everything was stacked in here like this. How easy is that to see what my dimensions are, how big everything is? And obviously I kind of over-exaggerated that a little bit. I put them right on top of each other. But even if they're like this, where I can read all the numbers nicely, is it still kind of hard to tell what I'm actually dimensioning there? I say yes, it is very hard to tell. So I want you to make sure you place these nice and neat, larger dimensions overall, over on the outside of the smaller dimensions, just as you see here. When you do that, I am definitely going to be grading sketches, and that's something I'm going to be looking for when I grade your sketches. All right, so once again, this is all full black. I'm going to go ahead and finish my sketch. And I'm going to go ahead and extrude. I'm going to come over here to extrude. Again, as almost always, I'm going to extrude both ways. And the amount I'm going to extrude is, let me see here. If that's 1/4, that's what I'm going to go maybe 1 1/4, see what that looks like. Oops. If I can type 1 1/4, that is. 1 1/4, let's see. I don't think that looks too bad. We might adjust here in a little bit, but we won't worry about that right now. Okay, so that part of the block's done. Now, I've got to put this extra little block here on the front of it. To do this extra little block on the front, I'm going to start another sketch. I'm going to click on Start 2D Sketch, and I'm going to put it on that front surface. From there, I'm going to go ahead and just use the rectangle commands. I'm going to come up here to rectangle. I'm going to attach my rectangle to this bottom right corner and pull this rectangle up and around. Now, here, I do want to be a little bit careful. I pull this rectangle up and around and I click right there on my origin. It's going to lock it in there and I won't be able to adjust it with constraints. I don't want that. I want to be able to dimension this to the size it is. So I'm going to pull it over here so where it does not lock in somewhere else, either there or here or whatever, and I'm going to click. So now, with that being done, I'm going to hit escape. Now I can adjust this line side to side, I can adjust this line up and down, and I can actually dimension to those lines. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to dimension from there to there, and I think I'm going to make that just 0.75, keeping down on a 1/4 inch increment, and from here to here, and maybe 1.25, what's that going to look like? I think maybe 1.25. It did just happen to end right there on my origin, but it's not locked on the origin. I can adjust that if I want to here in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and finish my sketch. I'm going to go ahead and hit extrude. I'm going to come up here above, or just hit E. I haven't mentioned that before, I don't think. E is extrude. It automatically recognizes that surface. I'm going to extrude that out just in the direction it is at 1/4 inch. And I'm going to go OK. And then I'm going to kind of look at my block and see what I've got. You know, overall, looking at the block, I don't look too bad, but I really do think this portion of it looks like it's a little bit too wide. This part down here doesn't look too bad. You know, I actually might like that a little bit longer down here too, but right now let's focus on one thing at a time. I think this portion's a little bit too wide. So since that's too wide, I'm going to edit that portion of it. Now we have to think about where I did that at. If I come over here to my model and hover over my model, oh, is that part of extrusion 1 or extrusion 2? It's part of extrusion 1. Now, next, what you have to think about, is it actually part of the extrusion? Or if I hit the plus sign, is it part of the sketch? Well, the sketch is that shape that it's showing up right now. The extrusion actually is the whole block. So it's actually extrusion I want to change. So I'm going to double click on the extrusion, and I'm going to change that from 1 1/4 down to 1. This is where the real power of Inventor comes in, on how easy things are to edit and how easy things are to change. Okay, so again, I think that looks pretty good, but I really do think that this whole block is a little bit longer. You know, maybe even just this block here is a little bit longer. So that's part of extrusion 2. So let's go here to extrusion 2. And again, we have to think, is that the extrusion or is it part of the sketch? It's actually part of the sketch. So I'm going to click on the plus and then double click on the sketch. So maybe instead of 1 1/4, I'm going to set that up to 1 1/2, 1.5. Check on that, finish the sketch, come back into there. You know what? I really think that's looking pretty good. It may be a little bit tall in this direction here, but you know, I really think I can live with it. I don't think I really need to go in there and edit that. I could, or we could go there and do that. I really think that's probably close enough. I'm going to live with that block right there, and I really think that looks pretty good. So that is block A finished. Now, or mostly finished. Now what I want to do though is I want to set a material to that. I always want I want to get you guys used to setting materials. So let's set this to material. Just pick one that you think looks creative or interesting. Again, not something see-through. I'm going to set it to walnut. Sure, whatever. I like wood. Set it to walnut, and there we go. That's great. So now we're going to go save this. When we go to save it, we're going to go File and Save. We're going to go to our CAD 1 and 2 folder. Let me see here. Desktop. Okay. I have a couple CAD 1 and 2 folders here. CAD 1 and 2. Inventor. This is going to go in your activity folder. Activity. Oh, actually, you know what? No, it's not. This is practice. You're doing it all with me. This is going to go to the practice folder. Practice folder. And we're going to say this as P-81. Sorry, I had a sneeze. Page 81, so P-81-Top-A. So P-81-Top-A. P-81-Top-A. And we're going to save and save that there. If you get that done, I'm going to be happy. We'll talk about what else we're going to do with this on the next video. Good job and good luck.